I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite books of all time, The Dirt. The biography of Motley Crue, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band. That's right, man. I'm going to be talking about Vince Neil, Nikki Sixx, Tommy Lee, and Mick Mars, and the mayhem that they created. I mean, these guys raged through the 80s in an Aquanet fog full of, just absolute chaos. I mean, this is a book of whiskey, porn stars, hot rods, car crashes. You got it all. Black leather high heels, overdoses, believe it or not, lots of death, lots of tragic death. I mean, this was the heaviest drinking, hardest fighting, most oversexed, arrogant rock band in the world. And they still are to this day. I mean, this book, The Dirt, is an epic tale of rock and roll Babylon. I mean, it's a story of evil men told by the evil men themselves. And like I said, there's an Aquanet fog and eyeliner in black leather hanging over the whole story. I mean, I don't know where to begin with this. I don't know where to even begin describing this book. You are going to want to take a shower just after reading the very first page. I mean, you can't look away. Read the very first page and you're hooked. And the next thing you know, you've read 500 pages of absolute, disgusting, vile, ridiculous, savage, crazy, unadulterated, human tragedy and mayhem all rolled into one. I mean, Vince, Nikki, and Tommy, and Mick. I don't know how any of them are still alive to this day. I mean, I just don't. I mean, this is The Dirt. This is the biography of all of them. I've got Tommy Land up here, which I've read, which is Tommy's biography, Tommy Lee's biography, where he basically just talks about how proud he is for having a really large dick. Now, Nikki Sixx's biography, the Heroin Diaries, just talks about, Nikki Sixx being, hooked on heroin all the time. And then Vince Neil's biography over here, which is basically a story about how much he hates these other two guys. And they're all interesting. The only one that doesn't have his own biography is Mick Mars. And I'm telling you, Mick, if you're out there listening, I am a professional writer. We should get together and we will do your biography, because I bet you got the best, most interesting story to tell. I mean, let's just go over. I'm not going to spoil a lot of the stories in this book, because if you want to see rock and roll just off the charts, if you just want to see a rock and roll story, there's nowhere to begin to even tell. Every 500 pages, and every page is just filled with another jaw-dropping WTF, where you're like, how can these people be successful in life at all with the poor decision making? Every moment of every day they're making the wrong choice at every opportunity that they can, and they are just they're just bulldozing everybody in their way. And we get to see all of this through the perspective of all four. And let me tell you something about Neil Strauss. Neil Strauss was the guy that did this. He also wrote The Game, and he does some self-help books. And he did the Marilyn Manson biography, and he also did the Jenna Jameson biography, which are also great. But this is his masterpiece. The Dirt is Neil Strauss's masterpiece. If you want to read a guy that can write a biography and just make you laugh out loud one moment and cringe in horror the next moment, and actually be sad there are some actual really tragic, sad scenes in this book. It's not just all rock and roll party, drug use, and mayhem. It is, I mean, each one of these characters just has devastating moments from their childhood all the way up until now, really. I mean, let's just talk about Vince Neil to start with. Vince, you know, he grew up in a normal California home, from all intents and purposes that we can gather. But he was a great singer. He was very popular with the girls. And his addiction was alcohol and girls. If there were girls, if you had a girlfriend, if you had a wife, you did not want to take her near Vince Neil, because he would steal her from you for a few days and just toss her into the garbage when he was done. And he didn't give a shit. He just didn't care. Those were sort of his vices, were the alcohol and the girls. And if you know the Vince Neil story, he did get into a drunk driving accident that killed one of his best friends. And again, they talk frankly about this in the dirt. And, you know, it's one of those moments where you're like, how do any of these guys even live? And not only that, but Vince Neil goes on to have a family later in life and children, and one of his daughters gets cancer and passes away, and it is so heartbreaking. You know, it's so heartbreaking. You know, because you can sense it in this guy who's just had it all, a rock star, lead singer of a most popular rock band in the world, uses and abuses everybody in his path, but he's still just a normal person with a heart. And, you know, it's a juxtaposition. And, you know, each one of these guys is a contradiction, because they do so many horrible things to each other and to everybody around them, but yet you're almost rooting for them the entire way. They're kind of like the Tony Soprano of rock bands. I mean, you know, if you've ever watched The Sopranos, you're like, man, Tony Soprano's the biggest turd in the world, but you're rooting for him all the time. You're always rooting for Tony Soprano. It's the same with these Motley Crue guys. It's like, God, these four dudes are just horrific individuals, but yet there's so much charm surrounding each one of them that and there's just a goodness buried deep in their hearts. I mean, you can just tell even with Tommy Lee, we'll talk about him next. Even with Tommy, he seems like just a genuinely good guy, you know. But gosh, did he have an anger problem? Did he go into fits of rages? And that's his vice, you know. He also was into the drugs and the rock and roll and the girls. I mean, he married Heather Locklear. He married Pamela Anderson. He was a poor husband to each of them. He was put in jail for, you know, domestic issues. Again, just does at every point in his life where he could have made the right decision, he makes the wrong one, right? And it's all trouble. It's all trouble. Except for when it comes to their music, it's almost as if they made the right choice every step of the way with the music. And then that boils down to Nikki Sixx. So we'll talk a little bit about him next, the heroin guy. His thing was heroin. It wasn't girls. It wasn't, you know, anger. He was a heroin addict. He writes all of their music. He's sort of the poet of the band, the dark, brooding, emo, goth poet of the band, sort of the leader, the ringleader of the crew. And he's just addicted to heroin. And he's so addicted that he just shoots up so much and so much and so much that he dies. He actually dies halfway through the book. And it just so happens that the paramedic that came to his rescue was a Motley Crue fan and just would not give up on trying to save Nikki Sixx's life. And they brought him back to life. I won't get into you need to read it. You need to read it. You need to read it. I'm telling you, this is one of the most addictive books ever. You know, and then we get to, but the Nikki Sixx was the driving force of this rock band. His songs were catchy. They were pop hits with a real heavy metal groove. And, you know, Tommy Lee was an awesome drummer. Nikki Sixx was a great bass player. And Vince Neil was just a unique singer. I mean, there's no other singer like Vince Neil. I mean, when you hear Motley Crue, you know it's Motley Crue because of Vince's vocals. Maybe they've deteriorated in later age, but who cares? He was a badass when he was younger, and Motley Crue was in their heyday. my favorite band. And then we got Mick Mars, the silent, stoic lead guitar player who nobody really knows anything about, but we get to know him a little bit in The Dirt. And what's his problem? Well, he's got a degenerative back disease, and so he's in pain nonstop, which probably leads to why his personality is so stoic and gruff and to the point all the time. He's just not one for the mayhem and party and the swirling nonsense that was around him. I mean, he just wants to be a great guitar player, but he's hampered by this back disease that he's got. And it's just these four guys, for whatever reason, came together. And they describe how each one joins the band. It's a history of the band. You find out where they all come from. You find out Nikki Sixx's parents and his mother abandoned him, and he was from a broken home, and he was an orphan. You find out about Tommy Lee's family, how they were just pretty much great people, and he seems like he was raised by good people. Same with Vince. Mick doesn't really talk about his family a whole lot. He doesn't talk a lot about anything. I mean, that's why I think we need to crack this guy open and, get a biography about him and just him so we can see what makes him tick. Because he is one of the greatest bluesy guitar players on the planet, Mick Mars. And so, it's just such a great book. I can't tell you. If you open it and read you're not going to stop. You're not. It's going to be one of those books you read in a few days because you're just going to, with your jaw open, you're going to be like, God, I wish I could have been those guys, because their life seems amazing. But holy cow, how did they live through it? And I mean, gosh, it is sort of a rock and roll fantasy. But gosh, it's like a rock and roll fantasy, almost in the depths of hell. It's like that would be all real cool and everything. But my gosh, you just destroyed everybody you've loved in the process of becoming a rock star. And I mean, just so many great stories, and just stuff that will make you just vomit in disgust, recoil in horror. You cheer them on for their successes. They talk about every single album they did and the process of it, and every tour they did, and every rock band that they've toured with, and the people they met, and everything. It's just so cool. Now, all that being said, if you've ever been to a Motley Crue show, and I've been to about maybe half dozen, they start out and they tell you right at the beginning of this book they wanted to be the loudest, craziest show ever, and they've done it. You go to a Motley Crue show, there is no louder, crazier show. I mean, they even in clubs, when they were lighting themselves on fire, stabbing each other with swords. I mean, they were drinking each other's blood. I mean, and then when they got money and then they started having the drum kits that would spin in the air and roller coaster over the thing, and they would fly and they would shoot fire out of their guitars. People think in that Mad Max movie where the guy shoots fire out of the guitar, that was a Nikki Sixx thing, man. He did that first, And, everything. I mean, their rock and roll shows, have everything from fire-breathing dwarves to, women that shoot sparks out of their vagina. I mean, it literally, that's what their live shows are like. I mean, they are amazing. They're just crazy, over-the-top, just rock and roll decadence from the moment they hit the stage to the moment they leave. These guys are killer. Killer! If you want to watch my Motley Crue album rankings, you can. I'll link to that. I just love this book. It's one of my top 5 favorite nonfiction books and biographies of all time. The Dirt, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band. If you don't want to read the book, which you'd be stupid not to, but if you don't want to, you can watch the Netflix series The Dirt, where they filmed the whole thing. You can go watch the Motley Crue biography on Netflix, The Dirt. By the way, it's a great, they did a good job of adapting this. And this is probably rated X, to be honest with you. It's not R, it's not NC-17. I mean, it's a hard rated X. The Netflix toned it down a little bit so you don't get quite all of the chaos. But, still a good show. And if you want to do yourself a double favor, read the book and watch the Netflix show. I'm only here to help you guys enjoy your lives more. And why not read and watch? Read and watch. So The Dirt, 10 out of 10, man. This book is a solid 10 out of 10. On the dial, some dials go up to 10, some go up to 11. The Dirt goes up to stun. Man, it is out of sight. It's hot. I mean, it is super fly, fantastic, grotesque, rock and roll degeneracy. And I loved it. Loved everything about it.